It's a great day to brew, baby. What is up? It's your boy Millzy, hometown commander and per your arrangement. We're back for another episode of Millzy Brews. This week we are doing all Neon Dynasty commanders. I just thought it'd be fun to go back to January of last year and cover Kamigawa, something that I was not able to cover for Millzy Brews. And kind of talk about some of the commanders that stuck out to me. We'll be having a couple episodes this week on different commanders from Kamigawa, but today we are doing probably, other than the Millzy Revisits episode we saw yesterday in Shrines, probably one of my favorite commanders from Neon Dynasty, and that's Isshin 2 Heavens is 1. This is a deck that I think I liked on first look. And the more I messed around with this list, the more I poked at it, the more I realized that I think it had everything I wanted in a Mardu commander. I just needed to find my spin. I needed to find my approach to Isshin. And I think this deck is probably my best approach to Isshin. So Isshin is red, white, black for a legendary creature, human samurai. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time 3/4. So 3/4 for 3 is a pretty great stat line. And I think Isshin creates a fun design space for a deck because we want to be aggressive and we really want to find our value in being aggressive, which is pretty cool. That's what Mardu already wants to do anyway. We're trying to find other ways to do it. And our land base, honestly, I think this land base is pretty straight up from what you'd expect from a Mardu land base. We're playing some shocks and fetches. We're playing Sokinzan, and for the token production, we're playing Eigenjo just for another piece of removal. Treasure Vault just to help with some mana production if we need it. Urza Saga can go get a couple pretty cool things in the deck. None of the Bugbear turns into a creature, and then when it attacks, we'll get us 2 Goblin tokens instead of 1 if we have Isshin out. And the rest of it's pretty much fanfare. I think with the addition of the reprints of the Painlands, even though they were very available, of course, before, they slot in as a little bit of an extra in the deck. I think the filter lands shine really well in this deck as helping you out with mana because we, of course, need all 3 of it for Isshin, but I think all of your mana comes important. I'm playing the Confluence and the City of Brass because I think more often than not, we're going to want to make sure we have all 3 of our colors. Of course, our first fetch land is going to go get Sivai Triumph and get us access to all 3. But I think Path of Ancestry, Plaza of Heroes, since a lot of our creatures are legendary, these things are going to come into handy. I think they're going to be really useful when it comes down to creating our mana. And normally I don't play the tap tri-lands just because in most decks I think the ramp packages make up for it. But since we don't have any ramp in this deck, I think Nomad Outpost is plenty fine in its slot. Getting into the enchantments, I think the enchantment slot in this deck is some of the best value that Isshin gives us. The first, I think, and most obvious one to me is Mardu Ascendancy. This is whenever a non-token creature you control attacks, put a 1/1 red goblin token onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So with Isshin out, for every non-token creature we attack with, we're getting 2 1/1 goblins tapped and attacking. Some rules to remember about bringing creatures tapped and attacking. They come in tapped and attacking. You choose the player they attack, and the creatures that come in tapped and attacking get around things like Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, Sphere Safety. So that's cool because you can kind of manipulate the kind of distribution of your attacks that way. The second enchantment that comes to mind for me is Fervent Charge. This one got very popular when Isshin came out. Whenever creature you control attacks, it gets +2/+1 a turn. So +4/+4 with Isshin out. And I think that makes literally every creature you can attack with 3 times as good, right? Because your 1/1 goblins go up to 5/5s. A lot of our creatures that we're attacking with just get better and better and get harder and harder to block effectively. My other favorite card, which I kind of borrowed a little bit from its time in Jetmir and learning about it over there, is Rabble Rousing. This is whenever you attack with 1 more creatures, create that many 1/1 white Sinister creature tokens. Now those creature tokens don't come in taps and attacking, but that'll still get doubled, so you still get the double the amount, and then you get the hideaway there if you have enough. I like it because you have no risk to attack with your tokens. They're just going to get replaced, and if you have Mardu Ascendancy out as well, they just get replaced twice. So you have you have no risk of swinging your tokens anywhere. You want to deal the damage. Paladin class I really like in this deck, especially when we get to the first one. Stops our opponent's whole play from countering our spells a little bit or interaction on our turn. But when you get to step 2, a flat +1/+1 buff on all your creatures combined with this gets even better. And then that level 3 is just going to make something really hard to block. We give it to one of our flyers. We give it one to one of our big creatures that already has nasty abilities, and Paladin class just shines through. We're playing Reconnaissance, easily probably the most broken enchantment in this deck, literally giving all of our creatures vigilance, which is pretty great. Duelist Heritage, when we attack, is going to give 2 of our creatures double strike, which is beautiful. That's very helpful. Black Market Connections and Fable the Mirror Breaker are in here on the front sides for the utility. Black Market Connections can give us that treasure every turn. Fable the Mirror Breaker makes that 2/2, which is going to net us 2 treasures when it attacks as long as we have Isshin out. But on the second part of the Saka, we can pitch a couple cards and take a couple cards. And then on the back is the second copy of Kiki Jiki, and we'll talk about Kiki Jiki in a second. Intangible Virtue, giving all of our creature tokens vigilance. This is going to be really good because then it's going to make almost all of our attacks free, because then we have tokens back to block. And I think that's what makes this deck probably the hardest to deal with once it gets set up, is this ability to almost take free attacks and not have to worry about anything but board wipes in the backswing. And Unquenchable Fury seems kind of fun as an aura. It says whenever this creature attacks, it deals X damage to defending player, where X is the number of cards in their hand. And with Isshin out, this is going to go off twice. So this is pretty cool because depending on what creature we put this on, or depending on who we attack, this can deal a lot of damage. And then this, paired with some of the creatures we'll talk about at the end, can create just some funny things. And then we're playing the Agasol, and I think the Agasol is more than what we want here, because if we can pay that 5 mana instead of dumping the 5 mana into spells, untap and get our Mardu Ascendancy again, get our Fervent Charge again. Remember, this Fervent Charge says to end a turn. So if we take an extra combat, and we'll talk about extra combats when we get up to the creatures, we're playing a few combos. We're now just stacking our creatures up and up. So the good part there is, let's say they chump block our 5/5 and it takes 2 damage. Well, if we untap it with Agasol and we attack again, and we have Fervent Charge out as well, and now it becomes a 9/7, and now they have to block it even more, right, to get rid of this damage. So I think this is one of those interactions that can help out really well. Sword of Feast and Famines come in and out of the list to pair with the Agasol. The only problem there is Sword of Feast and Famine is on damage and not on attack trigger. So it's not like Bear Umbra, where as soon as you attack, you get the mana back. The Feast and Famine only does it on damage. So you have to be a little bit more selective with who you give it to. But I still think it's the Agasol's worth running, because I think if you can get anywhere near 5 mana and you have nothing else to do with it, that 5 mana is always better to be used to get an extra combat. Moving up in the artifacts, we're playing a lot of mana artifacts. We need them, because at the end of the day, we have little to no card draw advantage. We're not in blue, we're not playing any green, right? We're not playing any ramp that way. So the artifacts are going to become the most important thing. And we have to spend a little bit of money here on the artifacts, because I think they're what's going to give us the aggressiveness we need. A lot of our creatures are a teeny bit are in that 3 to 6 mana range. So we do need to get there, and we need to get there consistently, and then we need to get there to punish our opponents. So I think the Crypt, things like Crypt and Mox Opal and Mox Amber are going to come in a lot of handy to kind of give us that push in the mid game to get us into that mana range we need. Boots in the Greaves there, just to give creatures that don't have haste to come down and get haste. I think one of the biggest examples of that is something like a Tali, giving it haste when it comes down, just to have it punch through for that ability. And hopefully Isshin's down, so we get to copy it twice. And then one of my favorite artifacts in the deck is Dolmen Gate. I've used this in plenty of other Gruul aggro lists or Gruul fight lists, but I think Dolmen Gate is almost near perfect in this list for all combat damage that we dealt to attacking creatures you control. So now you can almost swing for free, because you're not worried about your opponents killing your creatures. You're just going to swing and hit damage wherever you can. You pack this with Intangible Virtue or Fervent Charge or whatever, and now you're just swinging for gold. It doesn't even really matter what you do, because you're just going to get value off your attack. And if you're not playing another creature deck, now your opponents have to figure out what the heck to do. And we've tried to build the deck as best we can with some spells, so that if we get board wiped, we can still produce back. We're not worried about just losing as soon as somebody wipes the board. The card I'm most excited about for this list to try out and kind of see how it works is Inquisitorial Rosette from the 40k decks. It says when a equipped creature attacks, create a 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature token with vigilance that's attacking. Then attacking creatures gain menace until end of turn. And that seems kind of interesting because more often than not, you're going to put this on one of your bigger creatures. You attack, you with Isshin out. Hopefully, we're getting two 2/2 warriors, and then all of our tokens get menace, and that makes them even harder to block. And the chump blocks get even less prevalent because now they have to commit 2 creatures to do it. And if we're pairing this with fervent charge or those kind of things that we're always going to try to be getting, I feel like this could create a lot of scenarios where our attacks get even better and even better and even more punishing for our opponents. So that's one of those cards to me that feels like a win more card because it's going to always contribute to our combats getting better. And I think that's the one thing that this deck is going to push you to do if you're not used to attacking, if you're used to playing spells and you're used to comboing, you're not used to attacking, determining what attacks are worth it and pushing through your attacks to your opponents. This deck is going to challenge you on taking attacks, forcing your opponents to block, and pushing through your advantage in combat where you may not be used to it unless it's it's very easy in a green deck to only swing when you have a finisher, only swing when you have an overrun. But a deck like this, I think we have to trade some tokens for some incremental advantage. We have to get used to kind of swinging sideways and becoming that little bit of a threat, because if we don't, we're never going to close out the game. We're really playing a time clock on that first board wipe, right? That first board wipe is going to determine how we react and if we can win the game. And if you can time it before the first board wipe, if you can get enough traction ahead of time, I think you're going to just win the game outright. I think you're going to push too far ahead that your opponents aren't going to be able to figure it out. Those single target removal spells are going to be kind of useless when you have 8 creatures and they get rid of Isshin, sure, but then you still have everything else. You know what I mean? So this deck will probably challenge anyone who's not used to combat to kind of pushing themselves into combat. But going into the spells, I've tried my best to marry a ton of removal because I really feel like at the end of the day, that's what we need. And then just a little bit of search, a little bit of mana, and that. So let's talk about the search first. We're playing the D tutor, we're playing Enlightened tutor, we're playing Vamp tutor. The Enlightened tutor is almost always, if you see this in your opening hand, going to go for Mardu Ascendancy, Fervent Charge. You almost always want to get them and get them down early because they're the key linchpin pieces that push us forward. The D tutor and the Vampire tutor are just there, so if we need to get another creature for one of our creature combos, which we'll talk about in a second, you can do that. If you need to get another enchantment to pair one of our other enchantments, you can do that. I'm not playing the gambles. I'm not going deeper into the tutors because at the end of the day, we need other pieces to win the game. But I did want to play enough removal. Anguished I'm making Deadly Rollick, Path to Exiles, Swords, Terminate. We want to see some removal when we need it, and then we have Boros Charm, Flawless Maneuver for protection when we need it, where we were hopefully hoping to see them, at least one of them every game. You could also tutor for Flawless Maneuver. It's probably the single best protection spell we have because we can play it for free as long as Ishin's out, and then it's your kind of shields up button if you attack and somebody tries to wipe the board. Hopefully that's your protection. Now if somebody exile wipes the board, there's nothing we can do, but Boros Charm and Flawless Maneuver will both hit the indestructible button and hopefully just to keep us alive in those scenarios where someone's trying to wipe the board. Faithless Looting, Jessica's Will, looting's there for the draw. Jessica's Will is more there for the mana, but it is also some draw. I think these two do a very good job at. Faithless Looting does a very good job at the beginning of the game, getting some more cards into your hand and pitching what you really don't think you need. Sometimes that those 2 cards are worth trying to find the other pieces. Jessica's Will is almost always worth the mana. There's probably going to be a player most of the game that has 6 or 5 or 7 cards in their hand. And so if Ishin's out, it gets even better, right? Because we get to exile those top 3 cards of our library. We get to go searching for value. But I think if not that mana acceleration, remember, we need to make sure we have somebody whose hand has more than 3 cards. Otherwise, we're going negative on Jessica's Will. But I think as long as we go positive on Jessica's Will, you'll find very good success with the card, and I think it'll push you forward to more wins. Relentless Assault, we just want another extra combat piece in there. We'll talk about some of the extra combat combos we have up top, because we do a few of them. That's the goal of this deck. I wanted to go for the don't let my opponents untap, finish out with combats, get the game going type game plan. And so Relentless Assault is just one piece of that. And then Launch the Fleet's like one of my favorite cards for this deck. So for a single white, you get one target, and then you pay 1 for each beyond it. It says until end of turn, any number of target creatures gain whenever this creature attacks. Create a 1/1 soldier that's tapped and attacking. So the cool part is, because Launch the Fleet is giving the ability to the creatures, what this is going to do is Isshin will double it. So for every creature you give Launch the Fleet to while Isshin's out, you're doubling that amount. And then you just go ham from there. I mean, Launch the Fleet just seems like a really cool finisher. It seems like a really cool mid-game play to get you some tokens that people aren't going to expect. And my other favorite one, I learned a lot of the benefit of this card in Winota, and I think it seems kind of weird to most people, but this card does a lot more than you think it does, and that's Igandra's Uprising. It says create X 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. They gain menace and haste until end of turn, and each opponent creates -1 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. So to me, Igandra Uprising can be a finisher on the right board. If we have Fervent Charge and Mardu Ascendancy and Dolmen Gate out, Christmas Land example, but even with a Dolmen Gate out, Igandra Uprising could be a finisher. You're giving all of those 2/2s menace. And then your opponent has to decide, where do they block? Do they block them? Do they block something else? And if we have a Fervent Charge out, or if we have Paladin class leveled up, or if we have things that are buffing our creatures, those aren't just 2/2s. Those are 4/4s or 6/6s or whatever our abilities might be. And now they're not just that. They have menace and haste. So you could see that with the right board state, Igandra's Uprising can be a finisher, but it can also just set our board up and give us more tokens. We don't have to attack with them, but we probably want to. I think we want to use them to kind of push our strategy forward. But I think Igandra Uprising can be one of these utility cards that I would love to run like a Martial Coup as well. I think what may eventually happen with the deck, if I'm honest, is maybe you pull, a creature or two out. You put in a Martial Coup. You put in another X token producer like Secure the Wastes at instant speed. And what you could do is you could always use those as kind of your protection from board wipes. People wipe the board, dump 7 tokens into play, and then replay Isshin and get going, probably those cards come in as options. I think I have Grand Crescendo there, which does something very similar. But I think if I'm honest, that probably comes in maybe eventually. If you want to lean this a little bit more towards tokens, you bring the Martial Coup in, you bring the Secure the Wastes in, you could probably bring, other things like that in, and give yourself a little bit more protection in that tokeny game plan. But I think I like the way the deck sits now, because it's just really, it's really punishing when you get the game plan going. So before we go into our creature base, we're going to talk about Zerial really quick. Zerial is the only planeswalker I'm playing in the list, and that's just I've been trying to find a deck to put it in since AFR came out. And 2, I think this is the list. +1, giving all of our creatures +1/+0 in haste is more important than we think it's going to be. The 0 just makes you a token, but the -6 says you get an emblem with at the end of the first combat phase on your turn. Untap target creature you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. There are some combos with this. There are some ways we can take advantage of this. Basically, that emblem, more often than not, will pair with something like Kiki Jiki or the backside of Fable the Mirror Breaker, but we'll go into those combos in a second. But I think Zerial does a very good job. We're going to +1 a couple times, make our attacks even better. Hopefully we can protect Zerial on the back, get that emblem off, and probably just win the game on the next combat or the next couple of combats. Okay. So let's go into our creatures. This is going to look like probably a pretty interesting group of creatures. For someone who's never played Isshin before or has never seen this deck run, you're probably looking at this snapshot of creatures and going, this is a really random subsection of creatures. And the reason that is because every single creature in this deck is either giving us something on attack or helping us attack more. I think that's the thing we have to realize about this subsection of creatures. They're either giving us something on attack or helping us attack more. If the creature doesn't fulfill either of those two things, with the exception of one of these creatures, they're probably not worth it. So we'll just go through the list. We'll talk about why these creatures fit and if there's any combos they're in. Adeline comes down. It's a *4 where star is the number of creatures you control. And whenever you attack for each opponent, you get a 1/1 attacking that player. Okay, well, this is great because we're getting 2 with Isshin out. So now we're getting 6 creatures, hopefully, out of just Adeline. And Adeline doesn't even have to attack. She doesn't even have to attack to get that ability. But those 1/1s are coming down. So well worth the 3 mana. Adriana, Captain of the Guard. She has melee, so whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1 for each opponent. You attack this combat. So if you attack all 3 of our opponents, that's a max of +3/+3. This is other creatures you control have melee. So if we attack all of our opponents, all of our creatures are getting +3/+3. Remember, with Isshin, that would double, be +6/+6. So you can start to see more kind of the benefit there. Now, I'm talking about all of these in the scenarios where Isshin is out and doubling, but we're picking these effects even though they're still good just going off once, but they get even better when they go off twice. So I just want to label that way. Someone's going to probably watch this and go, but Millzy, you're just cherry picking the scenarios where you have Isshin down all the time and you're always doubling them. And sure, I think when you build the deck, that's what you want to think about. But we're also thinking about what happens if we don't get them twice? What happens if we only get them once? And I think both Adriana and Adeline and a lot of the creatures in this deck are well worth it even if we only get it once. Aurelia the War Leader. Whenever it attacks the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control after this phase. There's an additional combat phase. This is a card that is going to combo with helping us untap other creatures, especially other creatures that give us extra combats, whether they deal damage or do things like that. So Aurelia is going to help a ton, but in all reality, it's just going to get us an extra combat, which on face value may not seem like a lot in the early game, but when we're getting to the point where we're putting Aurelia down, those extra combats are going to end us the game. This doesn't necessarily work with something like Kiki-Jiki, because Kiki-Jiki can only copy non-legendary creatures, but untapping all of our creatures can allow us to untap Kiki-Jiki and copy something else to then have that thing trigger on combat. So although it doesn't necessarily work with Kiki-Jiki directly, it can enable Kiki-Jiki and the Fable Kiki-Jiki to go forward. And we'll talk about those creatures here in a second when we get to them. Brina. I love Brina. I've been trying to use Brina in something ever since this pre-con came out. My buddy Andrew and my play group played Brina for a really long time. And it was such a fun deck, and it looked so cool. But I had yet to see something I really felt like Brina fit in, that really had its place in. And I think Isshin is the exact perfect place because with Isshin out, this is going to double. It's going to give you more and more counters, and I don't think we mind giving our opponents the cards if it makes our creatures bigger. The cool part is if we're the person that's setting off Brina's ability, well, then we love it, right? We're drawing and we're getting tokens, so that gets even better. Brutal Horde Chief, whenever a creature we control attacks, defending player loses a life and we gain a life. This is killer because if this goes off twice for every creature we attack with, that's going to hurt. Now, thing to note about this ability, it says whenever a creature you control attacks. That wording means whenever a creature you control declares an attack. We wouldn't get the trigger off Adeline's 1/1s that come in, but we would get the trigger off every creature we declare an attack with. And at first you're going to think, oh, well, that's only 3 or 4 creatures, Millzy. That's not a lot. Well, no. Remember, the first time we attack with Mardu Ascendancy, we're getting all those tokens. And if we go into a second combat, those tokens then declare attacks. And now you can see where this is going to just divert into a massive amount of things. Coastline Marauders. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each land defending player controls. So this is just really cool because it's just going to start pointing itself at somebody and hopefully come through with that trample and get the damage through that way. The cool part is it goes off twice. So it's going to become a really big trampler. It only has 3 toughness, which can kind of stink on the attacking without a Dolmen Gate or something like that. But I think it's the price to pay if someone has enough lands to make it worth it. Combat Celebrant, one of our combos here. Combat Celebrant says if it hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. So this stops us from untapping this somehow and re-exerting it. You can only exert once per turn. But it says when you do untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, their additional combat phase. Well, this is a combo with Kiki-Jiki and the Fable side, because it says put a token into play that's a copy of target creature. That creature has haste. So when the copy of Combat Celebrant comes in, it hasn't exerted this turn. So that new copy of Combat Celebrant can exert itself when it attacks and gives us another combat. And we can, as long as as long as the original Combat Celebrant is alive, and we can continue untapping Kiki Jiki, and we're not attacking with it, we're tapping with it to make a copy of it. As long as we keep Kiki Jiki and this original Combat Celebrant alive, we can take infinite combats at that point. Now, again, we need to have something else going on. We're not just going to be slamming copies of Combat Celebrant into people, because at the end of the day, we're going to probably run out of them. But if you think about it, you could War of Attrition your opponents out, because you attack with the exert copy, whether they block it or not. That damage doesn't fall off the creature that blocked it. And you do that over and over again, and you're going to take out the whole table. Now, the wider the boards you have with this, the quicker it's going to take to end the game. But this is a way for you, even with just those two creatures, to end the game, because you're just going to continually take combats and make it worse and make it worse and make it worse and make it worse. So this was a scenario where I considered running Morog, right? Because Morog says every creature you gets +1/+0 for each combat you've taken. My only problem with it is it's 6 mana, and I felt like there were other creatures that did the extra combats thing better, and I kind of wanted to rely a little bit more on them over Morog. But I think Morog probably works its way back in, if we're honest, eventually. Commissar Severina Rain from the 40k deck says whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life, and we gain where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So this is great. Go wide, attack. Again, we pair one of these. We have a couple of these. We have Commissar. We have Mishra. We have a couple of these cards that say they lose X life, where X is the number of attacking creatures or other attacking creatures. You pair this with this, and now you don't even need, even if your opponent has infinite blockers, now you're dealing X damage every time, and you're pushing through, and you can see where these effects stack up together and make yourself better. Delina is just in here for the fun. Whenever it attacks, choose another creature you control and roll a d20. If you roll 1 through 14, you just get a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and has exile this creature at the end of combat. And then if you get 15 through 20, you create a copy of it and you roll again. And so we're hoping to roll again. But I think the big thing here is we just want to pick the right things. We just want to make more things, make them come in, have more abilities. Now, the cool part about Delina says at the end of combat. And the bad part here is that once we take an extra combat step, we're going to lose the token. But I think if we pick the right things, we're just going to get the right abilities. Now, the one thing I'll admit is, in the past, I once saw an arena that this worked with something like this, where this came in tapped and attacking and still got its proc, but I don't think that's correct. I need to do some more research here, because if it works that way, it makes this even better in the deck. If it doesn't work this way, then I think Delina maybe doesn't deserve the slot. So if any of you guys know about this, like if I choose to copy Mishra and Mishra comes in tapped and attacking, I don't believe I get his ability again for each copy. But if I do, well, then this becomes even better. But if I don't, I still think Delina is worth adding extra copies of things to the board and making things hard. And because the only reason I say that is if you copy a card like Port Razor that says, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, untap each creature you control. After this combat, there's an additional combat. Well, I don't care if I lose that copy of Port Razor at the end of combat, because it got me the additional combat, and that's all I cared about. Same thing with Scourge of the Throne. It says as long as when it attacks for the first time each turn, if it's attacking the player, well, that wouldn't work with Delina now that I think about it, because it says whenever it attacks. So I'd have to declare for that one. But it would work for Port Razor because we would hit somebody we haven't hit before, and then, we would get the extra combat. So I think Port Razor is probably the perfect target for Delina, but there's so many great targets. So anyway, that's something I need to think about, but I think even without it, still plenty worth it. Nothing like copying a few Aurelias that aren't legendary, even copying some other things that aren't legendary, and kind of just going as wide as you can. Everwild Captain. When enters the battlefield, become the Monarch. Whenever an opponent attacks you while you're the Monarch, it deals damage equal to that player to a number of cards in their hand. This is going to double twice with Isshin, which is great as well. Atali, whenever it attacks, everybody exiles the top card, and you can cast any number of them without paying their mana costs. This is huge. This is one of the best abilities in the deck, because you never know what you're going to hit off the top of somebody's deck, and it's great. Goldspan is really just here for that ability. Whenever it attacks, you get a treasure, get 2 treasures with Isshin, and then the treasure is tapped for double mana. Goldspan, even if we have no other treasure cards in our deck, is well worth the 5 mana. It's a hasty dragon. It's just a good card, and it's not even a bad target for Delina because the copies would be in the air, right? It would be harder to block. Hanwar Garrison, whenever it attacks, you just put 2 humans in, tapped and attacking. I don't believe I'm playing the battlements. I am playing the battlements, so we can actually merge them into the backside. Just figured it'd be fun to do that. Hellrider, whenever a creature you control attacks, it deals 1 damage to defending player. So this is cool because it can stack up. The more creatures we attack with, the more damage we do, and this is just one of the ones that adds into that effect. Aroa is going to give all of our creatures that Dolmen Gate effect where we prevent damage to them, but it also gives all of our creatures menace, and that just makes our creatures harder to block. Aroas is one of my favorite creatures in the deck just because it Aroas comes out, whether it's a creature or not, all of our attacks get worse. All of our the blocks for our opponents become harder because they can double block you because of the menace, but they're not going to do any damage to you. Karlach, whenever you attack, if it's the first combat of the turn, we get an additional combat. So we can't copy Karlach and get infinite combats that way because it wouldn't be our first combat of the turn. But Karlach is very great to have around for that reason. Krenko, one of those other great Isshin targets. Whenever it attacks, you put a counter on it and then create that many goblins. So the trigger goes off twice. You're going to put the counter on it, make the goblins, put the counter on it, make the goblins. So you get to do it twice, and that's even better, especially when we start pumping it up with any of those Paladin class or Fervent Charge. We just start making more and more goblins. Mishra, whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life, and we gain X life, where X is the number of creatures we control. We're not playing the Phyrexian Dragon engine, so we're not going to try to meld it. We literally only want it for that ability. Mural help shut down our opponent playing interaction on our turn, and then whenever it attacks, we create X11 soldiers, where X is the number of soldiers we control. We do, I believe, have a couple soldiers in the deck, but it's not something we're focused on doing. So more often than not, the goal of this is literally just her working by herself. You know, we do have a couple, but she's just working by herself. She's going to attack, get the soldiers, you know, more and more soldiers, and kind of help us push on that go wide mentality. We talked about Port Razor, talked about Scourge of the Throne, getting us extra combat to Tectonic Giant. Most of the time we're doing it for its first ability, deals 3 damage to each opponent. So with Isshin out, it's just going to deal 6 to every opponent on attack. That's pretty great. And exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them until the end of the turn. You can play that card. So the last one's a little risky because if you exile 2 things you really want, you only get one of them. But I think that 6 mana is more than worth it when you start hitting people and hitting them hard. And then Thundering Raiju, whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then Raiju deals damage to each opponent where X is the number of modified creatures you control, modifying being counters on them, auras, or equipment. This is great because with Raiju and Isshin out, you're going to get two counters that you can put on. And Raiju doesn't count. So you wouldn't put the counters on Raiju. You would just start putting the counters on everything else. Spread the counters out, get more and more triggers as you go, and Raiju just gets better and better. But guys, that is my brew for Isshin combats. It's a deck that I've started to enjoy more and more. I'm starting to play with it and really enjoy it. And I wanted to showcase it here on Millzy Brews because I did just recently kind of redo the list. I reapproached it after a really long time having it apart. So I thought it's still factored in under this Millzy Brews banner in that no list is perfect, and I certainly haven't really tested this list as much as a lot of the other lists I have in my, test box and things like that. But I thought it'd still be cool. Going over the considering board, Kadric Soul Kindler seems kind of cool to get extra copies of Legendaries. Hero Bladehold kind of fits into that soldier game plan with Mural. Ruinous Ultimatum, Board Wipe, Temp with Vengeance is just a way to put down a ton of creatures. This can definitely factor into our Mishra and that game plan of going wide and dealing X damage, Grand Crescendos, protection, and making tokens. That seems kind of interesting. Chromox there for some cheap mana, quick if you need it. Feast of Famine, like I said, pairs with that Agasol. I just wasn't quite sure if it fit in. Brave the Sands for everything coming Vigilance. Elemental Mastery is a card that I've had a lot of fun with in some other token decks. So you equip a creature and then tap it to get X elementals where X is that creature's power. It just seems kind of fun. Seems like a fun way to give yourself a ton of tokens and really pad out that go wide damage trigger. And then Rain of Riches, if you want to go towards the treasure game plan, I think Rain of Riches is just a really fun enchantment, but it seemed like it was maybe a little too expensive for what I was trying to do. But that's Isshin, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of Isshin? Is this a commander you've tried? What did I miss? What should I add to the deck? What don't you understand? What comments do you have about the deck? I'd love to hear it down in the description. Give me a like, subscribe if you want to see some more Millzy Brews content, and I will catch you next time.